Alright, fellow sleuths, time to take a look at the second episode of the day, The Quest for the Spider Sapphire. A year ago in Manchester, England, Bess Marvin shuffles through the airport and gives Stephen Dowd a bottle of pills. She spills the juice she hands him and instantly apologizes as she tries to clean it up. As he insults her for spilling juice, she slips something in his bag and then tries to leave for the ladies' room. He grabs her and pulls her close, telling her not to make them late. She promises she won't and hurries away as airport security approaches Stephen, asking him to come with them. They receive a call from a safety hotline as the female officer checks the man's bag and uncovers what Bess slipped in. He resists arrest but is dragged away. 1 year later, Bess rehearses her speech to Diane Marvin as she is presenting the annual Marvin Toast. Diane recommends talking about the Bordeaux argent in the family crest, which is the silver, as people no longer honor the founding families, but hold the hunt and roast while the hunt and roast are held for habit. Jan praises her for caring about the family and not the wealth. Bess wants to blend in with everyone else. Diane has found her an outfit, but she needs a comfortable pair of shoes as they will be hunting. Ace texts Bess, so Diane asks if the restaurant friends are joining them, to which Bess says they are. She prepares herself to take a call from Ace, who confronts her over being married to a man. He explains what happened at the hotel just as Bess sees Stephen by the harbor smiling at her. She confronts him and asks if she was afraid he would never find her. Looping through her arm, running through hers is talk and asking to talk business. Nancy draws a diagram to determine what happened with Odette, knowing that the shroud might be responsible for George being possessed. George is again burning in a case. The shroud is what's keeping her soul inside her body. Nancy has talked to the previous owner of the shroud, who was R. Jacobs in 1987. She's about to text Nick about needing the morning off, but George stops her, assuming that she hasn't told Nick about her situation yet. She opts to lie about them needing an emergency supply run. In the office of the Claw, Brian and Nick talk about him being in the magazine. Nick wants to prep him for his interview with Valentis Samuels, since she has a knack for seeing through people. Brian needs to be careful about his words, as that's the only way they will get into the inner circle. Brian tells him to relax as he's a serious adult, which is why Celia is having corporate PR send over some topics of things to avoid. Nick warns him to keep Nancy out of the conversation, just as he gets a text from George about heading out on a supply run. Brian perks up at Nancy's mention while Nick confronts George about them being good on supplies. She presses him off as she hurries out, and Nancy snips to Ryan that she sees them and stop being weird. Stephen and Bess walk through town with him complimenting on her getting closer remarks, reminding her that he was her family when her mother threw her out. She rebuttals with the things she did for him just to further his scams, including their sham marriage. As they argue, he reveals that he found her through the society papers. It's a counterfeit euro she planted on him didn't land him in jail for long. She asks what he wants, and he shows her a picture of a bracelet called the Spider Sapphire, a priceless Marvin heirloom that will leave her debts to him. Bess refuses to steal from Diane, but he advances as he manipulates her kleptomania. When that doesn't work, he threatens to call Diane about Bess's criminal past, which will be extradited to London and put through criminal processing. At the Claw, Bess practices a speech to Aunt Diana that explains her past, but Ace interrupts, telling her to mention that the marriage wasn't real, as she only dates women. She finishes her speech with Ace sure that Diana will understand. The Bess worries he won't and will kick her out of the family. She doesn't think Ace could understand, as she was kicked out of the house at 13 and suffered in poverty, which she can't relate to. He assures her that he doesn't need to lie to survive. As they enter the dinner part of the establishment, he introduces them to Grant, their new line chef, who will cover them while they attend Bess's party. He then tells Bess she has a visitor out back. Bess moves at the end and tries to tell the truth, but Diana is well aware of Bess's past, as she did a background check. She assures Bess that she is a beloved member of the family now, so her past doesn't matter. She just has to put the Marvin family first. She assures Bess that she has nothing to worry about and leaves. Bess calls Steve to end their deal. Brian meets with Valentia in the booths of the Claw, with an expertly dodging her questions. She finds him amused and asks if he intended to show the world he's on the same side as Everett, or if Ryan's forgiven him, but Ryan wants to move on to the next location, at the Hunt and Roast. She laughs at the irony of the event. Meanwhile, George Best finds that Art Jenkins is dead and his estate is being sold. Nancy picks up a random music box and approaches the woman selling everything. The woman dislikes the song as her Uncle Ralph used the songs to keep the voices away as he was eccentric. George presses to tell Nancy that Ralph T. Jenkins was nicknamed the Comeback Kid in 1986 because he was the sole survivor of a 3-car crash. He was revived miraculously 10 minutes later after being declared dead when his mother arrived to identify the body. The girls believe that his mother revived him, which led Ralph to put the shroud in an archive box. Nancy realizes Ralph died on the 21st, which is the same night they defeated the Glinka, and then when George was revived, Ralph died. George panics that if someone else uses the shroud, she will die, Nancy eerily adding that they will die the same way she killed Ralph. Dan explains to a group of people, including Valentia, that the hunt used to be grand with foxes and hounds, but in the 1960s there was an unpleasantness in the founding families, so that changed the format. Now it is only vestige of its former glory, but this way people don't get shot. Brian ushers Valentia away to meet his mother Celia, who feigns cooperation. Ace and Nick watch the situation as Nick explains that he's only working Ryan out of need, which annoys Ace. Bess arrives and gives Ace and Nick 2 baskets with Ace, being confident in his ability to win. Across town to the Drew house, Nancy comes to terms with having killed an innocent man, but George thinks have balanced out since she's alive. Nancy realizes that the voice in Ralph's head may have been the 2 other drivers, having got stuck inside Ralph the same way Odette is stuck inside George. The shroud brings the lingering spirits into the survivor, which is why flatlining her won't work. George runs off to get a drink as she's angry that Nancy was thinking of killing her and leaves the room. Melanthod worries Nancy, investigates only to find George hit over the head on the floor. Nancy is then chloroformed from behind by a gloved assailant. Dana and Bess go on their treasure hunt, with Dana wishing Bess had joined the family earlier. Bess is following, so she answers angrily and tells Stephen to leave her alone. He sends her a text of Bess and Nancy tied up, and only tell her where they are when he gives her the watch. He warns her not to test him again and has 1 hour to comply. Bess tells Ace and Nick about Stephen's threats. She believes them to be legitimate, as she once witnessed him beat a man to death. She just wanted to tell Diana, as she'll call the police if Stephen will hurt George and Nancy. Ace offers to pin the location of the photo based on the metadata. The Bess asks for his help with a 2-person play actor. Nancy groggily awakens to a constructor knot and a rope tied to a candle, which once burned through will trigger a fire from the gasoline spilled. Odette calls Nancy a bedbug who was kidnapped by her pretty friend I's husband. Nancy mistakes for Ace until Odette clarifies it's Bess. They bring her before Odette tries to let George take control again but fails, as George's mind puts up a fight, but she hasn't perfected relinquishing control yet. Meanwhile, Ryan and Valentina walk the woods with her. They're impressed that he's so down to earth, which he is surprised by. She tells them that everyone has good things to say, including Patrice Dodd, who is grateful for the groceries. Valentina brings up Lucy having a daughter, and that Patrice is looking forward to seeing her granddaughter again, to which Ryan tries to place blame on Patrice having dementia. Valentina isn't easily fooled and wonders if the child could one day inherit control of Hudson Enterprises, but accuses her and brushes it off and invites her to join the roast. Ace pressed tight on Diana's cup and spills some on her hand. Bess used to go get Diana's car brought around. She pickpockets the spider Sapphire while doing so. Ace and Bess meet with her, ready to meet Stephen, while Ace and Nick venture to get Nancy and George. In the warehouse, Nancy thinks they have about 5 minutes until the candle burns the rope. Odette thinks their predicament is karma for what Nancy did to Ralph Jenkins. Odette thinks punishment suits Nancy's worldview as she has remorse, as she can hear George's conversations when they interest her. Nancy thinks Odette can use remorse for killing all those people for centuries. Odette doesn't feel remorseful as those who called her knew the price of not paying her toll, just as Nancy did. Nancy wonders what kind of person she is after ignoring all those warnings, and if she was born this way, which confuses Odette. Nancy clarifies that she thinks this is her bloodline, but Odette doesn't recognize the true bloodline until Nancy reveals she is Hudson. Odette coolly realizes Reverend Hudson was a murderer and an evil man. She's angry that Nancy, his descendant, now wants to expel her from George's body. Beth speaks to Stephen, who will text her the address of Nancy and George's location once he's safely driven away. He believes that the spider Sapphire makes up for her mistakes. George tells him the real mistake was believing he was her only option as a child. She warns him to never come back. He whispers that their debt is paid and leaves. Nancy sees Nick and Ace through the door. Nick breaks the glass open the door. Ace runs and then blows out the candle seconds before it's too late when Nick catches the oil lamp. Nancy warns about the constructor nod, but Ace is an Eagle Scout and talks Nick through freeing them. Odette is mortified by Nick having a knife and begins to strangle herself while whispering French. George takes over again and panics as Nick cuts the rope. He holds her after an attempt to soothe her. Bess walks home when Diana's van pulls up. Jack confronts Bess about stealing the spider Sapphire. Bess acts as though she doesn't know what happened to the spider Sapphire, though Diana has the bracelet code to the micro-tracker that shows it in Bess's possession. Bess realizes that Stephen slipped it back into her pocket before he left. Diana is deeply disappointed but Bess tries to convince Diana that Stephen will come back. Diana doesn't believe that she will put the family above her and cannot put her family for the risk. Bess herself Diana, who coolly calls her Bess Chirani, and informs her that they are no longer related. Heartbroken Bess cries as Diana drives away. Bess apologizes to her friends for what she put them through, Nancy knowing that it wasn't her first chloroform. Bess admits that she reverted to a child when she saw Stephen, but it all planned out and knew that Diana would kick her out of the family just like her mom did. She emotionally admits that he succeeded in making her feel terrible, running upstairs in tears. Ace holds back while Nick goes to the kitchen to get ibuprofen for George. When he's gone, Nancy slides a musical box to George as she thinks Ralph lost the fight with the voices in his head. The box turned the Larkspur Lane gift shop, which surprises George. This meant he was clinically insane. Nancy worries that if George can learn to coexist with Odette, the same thing will happen to her. Meanwhile, Valentina leaves a voicemail about believing that there is no more to Hudson's secrets and wants to stay longer to learn them. She then approaches Ryan and Celia. Bess declines cookies and milk from Ace, and she throws her speech in the fire. Nick confronts George about why he said you could have her back in French when she was tied up as she doesn't know French. George finally tells him that she is possessed by Jet Lamar, and that's what has been happening. Sherrod pulled both George and Odette's spirits into her body, but she isn't in pain, though if anyone uses it again, she'll die for real. Nancy's on her way to get the shroud when she arrives. The lockers in the claw are vandalized and everything's strewn about, with the shroud missing. Dun dun dun. So anyway, let's take a look at some trivia surrounding this episode. Nancy being chloroformed was a callback to the book series. This is why Nancy tells True Crew this isn't her first chloroforming. It took several tries for the props team to achieve the look and feel of the spider Sapphire. In the end, the props department created the look by altering existing antique watch to give it a high-class look and feel. So overall, I think it's a pretty good episode, and yeah, I do feel kind of bad for what happened to Bess. And also, I'm happy that George told Nick about what's going on with her, so yeah. So overall, I give The Quest for the Spider Sapphire 4 Deerstalkers out of 5. Anyway, tune in as we to the final episode of the day, The Bargain of the Blood Shroud. So, until then, remember everyone, the game's afoot.